I installed a sheet of foam core across the gap where the track will come into the trestle, and I marked the center line as it approached the 30-inch bridge, and of course that'll be a straight 30-inch section, and as it leaves there's another curve that goes off to the opposite end that goes up to the mine. Now I've taken that center line through here and I've marked where the vents were going. The end of the trestle is located here, and then I have coming off of there a tangent coming off with a curve going into a straight here that will follow. I've marked the end of the trestle at both ends, and then the other bends for this trestle are 15 feet on center, and I've marked a center line on that center line of the track, 90 degrees to each section, so it does fan out. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut short lengths of 12-inch by 12-inch pieces of wood from bent to bent. These are the bents. And then these joists, these triple joists that we built earlier, slightly oversized, they will go on each side of that. This is a spacer that will be glued to this template. And I'll cut these to match the ends of those center lines of the bends, and they will slowly form going around, creating a curve. And once that's glued in place, each of the trestles, the bends will go on top of that and be glued in place. And I do all this inverted, and as I said before, the reason I do that is so that the deck itself will end up being dead flat. And we'll do that next. We'll mark these, because these are oversized, and they will be shorter on the inside and longer on the outside. That bevel there will be created to have a flush joint all the way through. So we'll get that center line going through, and then once that's done, as I said, we'll put each of the bends, and then the cords will go through that'll hold them all together. I've now completed the installation of the two center beams under the ties and the ties on top, and the pin connected bridge deck is here, which is straight, and then we go off the end of it to a curve on the opposite end. You can see where I have in the center there that 12-inch piece of spacer with the two center beams underneath here, and then the ties, and they follow each straight of the curve. It's not done in a curve. And what I've decided to do at each end of the pin connected bridge is I've got two outriggers in here that'll have a deck on here, and they will have water barrels placed on top. This way we get some assurance that if there is a fire, it's at each end of the pin connected bridge, but also protecting the trestle at each end. This is easily removed because there was no glue in place, and you can see there's that center beam as a spacer that is on the center line of the track, spaced between each of the future bends across here, and that gives me a nice curve in here with these two center joists in here, or beams, and then I'll be putting the bends on top of each one of these. And what we'll do at that stage is we'll lay this down on after I put the rail on, upside down, and then I'll take each of the bends and I'll glue the bends on top, and I'll put a square on the side here to secure it until it's dry. I'll also take one of these end retaining walls that has a bent on there with the retaining timbers on each side, and you see where they're all fingered in the joint. And I'll take that, and that'll also be installed on the end of the beams in here, so that they rest on that beam on the top of the bent. And when that's in place, what that will look like will be basically that, and then the bends will fall underneath here. So it gives you an idea of what that would look like. The rails are now installed, and I'm going to turn this over shortly and install the bends on the underside. You'll notice that what I did was leave extra rail on past the end of the steel bridge so that it overlapped onto the trestle. That way I don't have a joint right here, and I help to smooth that bridge part out here. The same thing will happen at the other end. I've left the rail a little longer past the end, so that at the end of the last bent of the retaining wall, this will run over onto the roadbed, again allowing a nice smooth transition across this area instead of putting a joint right here. I'm installing these bends on the joints between these beams where they bend, and what I've done is I've got a selection of iron bars. You can use anything that is square, and I just put one on the back side to support it, one on the front side, and I've glued that on that joint so it's always square to the joint. I also put a square up against it because this trestle is level, it's not on a grade, and I've got the square against the beam and the leg to make sure that it is absolutely perpendicular. And I already know it's perpendicular this way because I've marked that joint where the top of the bend sits. And I'll continue these all the way along in the upside down position. And as I said before, by doing it upside down, it's a lot easier to install the bends to start with because they're not hanging, and at the same time the deck is flat, and so I have a nice level surface that I'm working on, so I can be sure that everything is nice and square and level and perpendicular. I'll then put the girts between them to keep them braced this way, still in this upside down position. That'll stabilize everything, so when I turn it over, everything will be very rigid and I can handle it very easily then.